Mr. Alexander Hartwell was a man who had everything: money, power, and influence. His name was known across the globe, and his business empire stretched from New York to Tokyo. But despite all his success, there was one thing he couldn't buy back: happiness. 5 years ago, his world had shattered when his only daughter, Emily, disappeared without a trace. She was just 16 at the time, full of dreams and laughter. Her sudden vanishing left a gaping hole in Alexander's life that no amount of wealth could ever fill. Every year since then, Alexander marked Emily's birthday alone, sitting in silence as memories of her flooded his mind. He remembered how she loved books, how she would sit by the window reading for hours. He remembered her giggles during family dinners and the way she used to hug him tight whenever he came home late from work. Most of all, he remembered the day he gave her a special gift: a small sapphire pendant shaped like a teardrop, encased in delicate gold filigree. It was something he had picked out himself, knowing how much she adored blue. She had worn it every single day after that, refusing to take it off even when swimming or sleeping. But now the necklace was gone, along with Emily. The police had searched tirelessly, but found no leads. No ransom demands, no sightings, nothing. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Over time, the case went cold, and Alexander was left with nothing but unanswered questions and sleepless nights. He threw himself into his work, trying to distract himself from the pain, but the emptiness in his heart remained. One crisp autumn afternoon, Alexander decided to step out of his penthouse suite in Manhattan. He didn't have any particular destination in mind. He simply wanted to escape the suffocating loneliness of his apartment. As he walked down Fifth Avenue, the bustling city streets offered little comfort. People hurried past him, their faces buried in phones or distracted by conversations. None of them seemed to notice the tall, brooding man walking among them, weighed down by grief. Eventually, his feet led him to an exclusive jewelry store tucked between two towering skyscrapers. The shop was known for its rare gems and exquisite designs, catering to the wealthiest clientele in the city. Alexander wasn't planning to buy anything. He rarely wore jewelry himself, but curiosity got the better of him. Stepping inside, he was greeted by the soft chime of a bell above the door and the warm glow of spotlights illuminating glittering displays. The salesperson approached him with a polite smile, ready to assist. "Good afternoon, sir," she said. "Is there anything specific you're looking for today?" Alexander shook his head absent-mindedly, glancing around the room. His eyes wandered over rows of sparkling diamonds, emeralds, and rubies, each piece more dazzling than the last. Yet none of them caught his attention until he saw it. There, nestled inside a glass display case near the corner, was a pendant that made his breath hitch. At first glance, it looked ordinary enough, but as he moved closer, his heart began to race. It was unmistakable. The small sapphire pendant shaped like a teardrop encased in intricate gold filigree. It was identical to the one he had given Emily all those years ago. Every detail matched perfectly, right down to the tiny imperfection on the clasp where he had once adjusted it for her. Alexander froze, staring at the necklace as though it might disappear if he blinked. His mind reeled with questions. How could this be possible? Had someone stolen it from Emily? Was it a replica? Or was this some cruel prank meant to torment him? Whatever the explanation, seeing the pendant here in this store felt like a punch to the gut. Memories of Emily flooded back, overwhelming him. He clenched his fists, trying to steady himself. "Sir?" the salesperson asked hesitantly, noticing his distress. "Are you all right?" Alexander turned to her, his voice trembling slightly. "Where did this come from?" he demanded, pointing at the pendant. The woman blinked, taken aback by his intensity. "Oh, that piece," she said, recovering quickly. "It arrived last week as part of a private estate sale." She hesitated, sensing his urgency. "Would you like me to find out more details for you?" "Yes," Alexander replied firmly. "I need to know everything." While the salesperson checked her records, Alexander stood rooted to the spot, unable to tear his gaze away from the necklace. His thoughts raced wildly. Could this really be Emily's pendant? If so, what did it mean? Had she sold it willingly? Or had someone taken it from her? And why was it here in this luxurious boutique instead of being locked away in some dusty drawer? After a few minutes, the salesperson returned with a folder in hand. The pendant came from a recently deceased collector named Victor Langston, she explained. He was known for acquiring unique pieces over several decades. His estate held an auction last month, and we purchased several items from it. Victor Langston. The name rang a bell, though Alexander couldn't quite place it. He thanked the salesperson and stepped outside, clutching the receipt for the pendant tightly. In his hand, he had bought it impulsively, unwilling to leave without it. Now, standing on the busy street, he felt a strange mix of emotions: hope, fear, anger, and desperation swirling together in a chaotic storm. Back at his penthouse, Alexander pored over every scrap of information he could find about Victor Langston. Online articles described him as a reclusive millionaire with a passion for collecting rare artifacts. He lived in a sprawling mansion outside the city, rarely seen or heard from except during high-profile auctions, where he occasionally sold off parts of his vast collection. There were rumors about his eccentric behavior and secretive nature, but nothing concrete enough to suggest foul play. Still, Alexander couldn't shake the feeling that Langston might hold the key to Emily's disappearance. If the pendant had ended up in his possession, there had to be a connection. Determined to uncover the truth, Alexander reached out to private investigators, hiring the best team money could buy. They promised to dig deep, leaving no stone unturned in their search for answers. As days turned into weeks, Alexander grew increasingly restless. He spent hours staring at the pendant, turning it over in his hands, searching for clues he might have missed. Each night he lay awake, haunted by visions of Emily, her bright smile, her sparkling eyes, the sound of her laughter echoing in his ears. He replayed their last conversation in his mind, wondering if he could have done something differently to prevent her disappearance. Finally, the investigators returned with a breakthrough. They had discovered that Langston often dealt with stolen goods, including jewelry traced back to missing persons. One document mentioned a young girl with blonde hair and blue eyes who had traded a pendant for food. The description matched Emily perfectly. Alexander's heart pounded as he absorbed the news. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. Maybe Emily was still alive. Maybe she had escaped whatever horrors she had faced and was hiding somewhere, waiting for him to find her. With renewed determination, Alexander prepared to visit Langston's estate personally, determined to uncover the truth no matter what it took. Little did he know, this journey would lead him down a path filled with danger, secrets, and revelations that would change his life forever. The next morning, Alexander Hartwell woke up with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. The information about Victor Langston's dealings had reignited something inside him, a fierce determination to find his daughter, Emily, no matter the cost. He dressed quickly, choosing a dark suit that made him look authoritative and unyielding. As he stepped into his sleek black car, he reminded himself to stay calm and focused. Emotions could cloud judgment, and right now, clarity was everything. Langston's estate was located an hour outside the city, nestled deep within acres of dense woodland. The mansion itself loomed like a ghost from another era, an imposing structure with ivy-covered walls and towering windows. It had been sold shortly after Langston's death, but some of the staff still worked for the new owner. This gave Alexander an opportunity, a way in. Disguised as a potential buyer interested in acquiring antiques, Alexander arrived at the estate just before noon. A young man greeted him at the gate, checking his credentials before allowing him access. Inside, the house was eerily quiet, its grandeur overshadowed by neglect. Dust clung to every surface, and faint cobwebs hung from chandeliers that once glittered under candlelight. The air smelled musty, carrying whispers of secrets long buried. Alexander wandered through the halls, pretending to admire the faded portraits and antique furniture while keeping an eye out for anything unusual. His heart raced as he climbed the staircase leading to the second floor. Each step creaked beneath his weight, echoing through the empty corridors. Memories of Emily flooded his mind again, her laughter bouncing off these same walls, if only in his imagination. He clenched his fists, willing himself not to lose focus. His search eventually led him to the attic, a dimly lit space crammed with trunks, crates, and forgotten treasures. Here, amidst the chaos of discarded belongings, Alexander found what he had been looking for: a leather-bound journal tucked away in a corner. Its cover was worn, its pages yellowed with age. Opening it carefully, he began flipping through entries written in Langston's meticulous handwriting. At first glance, the journal seemed mundane, a record of transactions, descriptions of rare artifacts, and occasional musings on the art of collecting. But as Alexander delved deeper, certain passages stood out. One entry, dated 5 years ago, sent chills down his spine. Young girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, traded pendant for food, too scared to speak. Alexander's hands trembled as he read those words over and over. His throat tightened, making it hard to breathe. Could this really be Emily? Had she ended up here, in this very house, after disappearing all those years ago? The thought both thrilled and terrified him. If Langston had taken her in, or worse, held her captive, what had become of her afterward? Determined to uncover more, Alexander continued scanning the journal. Other entries hinted at Langston's darker side. There were mentions of stolen goods, shady deals, and even arguments with people who accused him of exploiting vulnerable individuals. One particularly alarming note described how Langston disposed of evidence when things got too risky. What did that mean? And why had no one suspected him before? As Alexander absorbed the chilling details, he realized he needed help. This wasn't something he could tackle alone. Returning to the city later that evening, he assembled a team of private investigators, sharing the journal entries and urging them to dig deeper into Langston's past. Together, they mapped out a plan to trace anyone who might have interacted with Langston during his final years. Over the next few weeks, leads began trickling in. Former employees of the estate were tracked down and questioned. Some refused to talk, fearing retaliation or legal trouble. Others, however, provided valuable insights. A groundskeeper recalled seeing a teenage girl working in the garden sporadically. She rarely spoke but always wore a distinctive blue pendant around her neck. Another employee mentioned overhearing Langston argue with someone about getting rid of loose ends. Each piece of information painted a clearer picture of what might have happened to Emily. It appeared she had somehow ended up in Langston's care or captivity after running away or being abducted. Whether she had traded the pendant willingly or been forced to give it up remained unclear. What mattered most was that she had survived long enough to leave traces behind. One afternoon, as Alexander reviewed the growing pile of evidence in his office, his phone rang. It was Detective Harris, a seasoned investigator who had been working closely with his team. "Mr. Hartwell," Harris began, his tone urgent. "We've got a lead you need to hear." Alexander's pulse quickened. "Go ahead." "We arrested a man earlier today trying to sell counterfeit jewels. Among his belongings, we found a photograph of a young woman wearing your daughter's pendant." Time seemed to stop. Alexander gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. "What did she look like?" he asked hoarsely. "She matches Emily's description," Harris replied. "Blonde hair, blue eyes, slightly older, but unmistakably her." Without hesitation, Alexander demanded to see the photo. Moments later, it was emailed to him. When he opened the attachment, tears welled up in his eyes. Despite the grainy quality of the image, there was no mistaking her face. It was Emily, thinner, wearier, but undeniably alive. Her expression was distant, almost haunted, yet the pendant gleamed brightly against her chest, a beacon of hope in the darkness. For the first time in years, Alexander allowed himself to cry. Not tears of despair, but of relief and gratitude. His daughter was alive. She had endured unimaginable hardships, but she had survived. Now, it was up to him to bring her home. The suspect confessed under interrogation, revealing that he had acquired the photo from a remote cabin owned by a reclusive individual. Authorities immediately launched a full-scale search, combing through the woods surrounding the area. Meanwhile, Alexander prepared himself emotionally for what lay ahead. Finding Emily was only the beginning. Helping her heal would be the real challenge. That night, as he sat alone in his study, clutching the photograph close to his chest, Alexander made a silent promise. No matter how broken Emily might be, no matter how much pain she had endured, he would do everything in his power to make her whole again. He owed her that much and so much more. The days that followed were agonizingly slow. Every ring of the phone, every knock on the door, sent Alexander's heart racing. He barely slept, pacing the floors of his penthouse like a caged animal. Finally, late one evening, the call came. "We've found her," Detective Harris said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. Alexander didn't wait for further details. Grabbing his coat, he rushed out of the building and headed straight to the location Harris had provided. The drive felt endless, each mile stretching longer than the last. When he finally reached the cabin surrounded by flashing police lights and officers securing the perimeter, his legs nearly buckled beneath him. Inside, huddled in a corner, was Emily. She looked fragile, her once bright spirit dimmed by years of hardship. Her blonde hair was tangled, her clothes tattered, and her eyes wide with fear. At first, she didn't recognize him, but as Alexander knelt beside her, whispering her name over and over, something shifted in her gaze. Slowly, painfully, she reached out and touched his face as if testing whether he was real. "It's me, sweetheart," Alexander choked out, pulling her into a tight embrace. "I'm here. You're safe now." Emily's body shook with sobs. As she clung to him, her grip desperate and unyielding. For the first time in years, Alexander felt complete. His daughter was back. But he knew their journey was far from over. Rebuilding their relationship would take time, patience, and unwavering love. Yet, as they sat together in the flickering light of police flashers, Alexander vowed never to let her go again. In that moment, surrounded by chaos and uncertainty, father and daughter found solace in each other's arms. The pendant, still hanging around Emily's neck, symbolized not just survival but resilience, the unbreakable bond between a parent and child that no force on earth could sever. The reunion between Alexander Hartwell and his daughter Emily was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. When the police led Alexander into that remote cabin, he barely recognized the frail figure huddled in the corner. Her blonde hair, once so neatly brushed and tied back with ribbons, was now a tangled mess. Her face, which used to glow with laughter and mischief, was pale and gaunt. Yet, despite the years of hardship etched into her features, there was no mistaking her eyes, those piercing blue eyes that mirrored his own. Alexander knelt beside her, his voice trembling as he whispered her name. "Emily. It's me, Dad." At first she flinched, recoiling instinctively as though expecting harm. But when their eyes met, something flickered in hers, a spark of recognition. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out, her fingers brushing against his cheek as if testing whether he was real. Then, like a dam breaking, tears streamed down her face, and she collapsed into his arms. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. They simply held each other tightly, as though afraid the moment might vanish if they let go. Outside, the world buzzed with activity. Police officers securing the scene, paramedics preparing to examine Emily. But inside the cabin, time seemed to stand still. Alexander stroked his daughter's hair, whispering apologies over and over again. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have found you sooner." Emily didn't respond at first. She clung to him silently, her body shaking with sobs. It wasn't until later, when they were safely seated in an ambulance, wrapped in warm blankets, that she finally spoke. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "You came for me," she said, her words filled with disbelief. "After all this time, you still came." In the days that followed, Emily underwent medical examinations and psychological evaluations. Physically, she was malnourished and weak, her body bearing the scars of years spent in captivity. Mentally, she was even more fragile. The trauma she had endured had left deep wounds, and her trust in people, especially men, was shattered. Doctors warned Alexander that recovery would be a long and difficult process. Emily needed patience, understanding, and unconditional love. Above all, she needed time. Alexander spared no expense in ensuring his daughter received the best care possible. He hired a team of therapists specializing in trauma recovery and arranged for her to stay in a private facility where she could heal without media interference. Every day he visited her, bringing books, flowers, and small gifts to remind her of happier times. Sometimes she smiled faintly at his efforts. Other times she retreated into herself, refusing to speak or make eye contact. Despite the challenges, Alexander refused to give up. He remembered the promise he had made to himself in that cabin, that he would do whatever it took to help Emily heal. So he listened when she wanted to talk, respected her silence when she didn't, and never pressured her to share more than she was ready to. Gradually, she began opening up, revealing fragments of her story in halting sentences. She told him how she had run away from home on her 16th birthday after arguing with her foster parents. Scared and alone, she had wandered the streets until Victor Langston found her. At first, he had seemed kind, offering her food and shelter, but soon she realized she was trapped. Langston forced her to work in exchange for scraps, confiscating anything valuable she possessed, including the pendant. Whenever she tried to escape, he threatened her, warning her that no one would believe her if she spoke out. Hearing these details broke Alexander's heart. He couldn't imagine the terror his daughter must have felt, living under such conditions. Yet through it all, she had held on to hope. She had believed, deep down, that her father would never stop looking for her. That belief had kept her going, even in the darkest moments. As weeks turned into months, Emily began to regain some semblance of normalcy. With therapy and support, she started confronting her past, learning to process the pain rather than suppress it. She also reconnected with her love for reading, spending hours lost in novels and poetry. One day, while browsing through a bookstore with Alexander, she picked up a copy of The Secret Garden, a book she had cherished as a child. Seeing the familiar cover brought tears to her eyes. "I read this every night before bed," she admitted, softly. "It reminded me of you, of home." Alexander hugged her tightly, overwhelmed by emotion. "You're home now, sweetheart, and nothing will ever take you away from me again." Slowly but surely, Emily began rebuilding her life. She moved back into Alexander's penthouse, decorating her room with photos and mementos from her childhood. Together they created new memories, cooking meals together, watching movies, taking long walks in Central Park. Each step forward was a victory, a testament to their resilience as a family. Yet, even as Emily grew stronger, shadows of her ordeal lingered. Nightmares plagued her sleep, and crowds often triggered panic attacks. On particularly bad days, she withdrew completely, retreating into solitude. During those times, Alexander stayed by her side, reminding her that she wasn't alone. "We'll get through this together," he assured her. "No matter how hard it gets, I'm here." One evening, as they sat together on the balcony overlooking the city skyline, Emily turned to her father with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think maybe we could help others like me?" she asked hesitantly. "Kids who are lost or scared or don't have anyone to turn to." Alexander smiled, pride swelling in his chest. Despite everything she had been through, Emily's compassion and empathy remained intact. "Of course," he replied. "Whatever you want to do, I'll support you every step of the way." Inspired by her suggestion, Alexander founded a non-profit organization dedicated to finding missing children and supporting families affected by similar tragedies. Named Emily's Light, the foundation quickly gained traction, raising awareness and funds to aid search efforts across the country. Emily herself became actively involved, using her story to advocate for change. Though public speaking terrified her at first, she found strength in knowing her words might inspire others to keep fighting. Through her work with the foundation, Emily discovered a renewed sense of purpose. Helping others gave her a reason to wake up each morning, a reminder That her suffering hadn't been in vain. She also formed friendships with volunteers and survivors, creating a network of people who understood her struggles and celebrated her victories. By the end of the year, Emily had transformed in ways Alexander never thought possible. She was still healing, still learning to navigate the complexities of adulthood after years of isolation. But she was also thriving, rediscovering her passions, pursuing education, and dreaming of a future full of possibilities. The pendant, which she continued to wear daily, served as a symbol of her journey, a reminder of both the darkness she had endured and the light she had fought so hard to reclaim. For Alexander, seeing his daughter smile again was worth every sacrifice. He knew their bond would always carry scars, reminders of the years they had lost. But those scars were also proof of their strength, the unbreakable connection between a father and daughter who refused to let tragedy define them. As they stood, together on New Year's Eve, watching fireworks explode over the city, Emily slipped her hand into her father's. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice steady and sincere. "For never giving up on me." Alexander squeezed her hand, his eyes glistening with tears. "Always, sweetheart. Always." And in that moment, surrounded by the promise of a new beginning, they knew they had finally found their way back to each other. Months had passed since Emily's return, and while her physical wounds were healing, the emotional scars ran deep. Alexander Hartwell watched his daughter closely, noticing the subtle changes in her behavior, the way she flinched at loud noises, avoided eye contact with strangers, or retreated to her room when overwhelmed. Yet, amidst these struggles, there were glimmers of hope. She laughed more often now, shared stories from her favorite books, and even began sketching again, something she used to love as a child. Despite the progress, Alexander knew Emily still carried burdens too heavy for words. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, he gently broached the subject. "Emily," he said softly, placing a hand on hers, "I know you've been through things I can't fully understand, but if you ever feel ready to talk about it, I'm here. No judgment, no pressure, just me." Emily hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of the pendant around her neck. For a long moment she was silent, staring at the floor. Then quietly, she began to speak. Her voice was shaky at first, but as the words tumbled out, they gained momentum, painting a picture of the nightmare she had endured. She recounted how Victor Langston had lured her in with promises of safety after she ran away from her foster home. At first he seemed kind, offering her food and shelter, but soon she realized she was trapped. He controlled every aspect of her life, forcing her to work in exchange for scraps. When she tried to resist, he became violent, using fear to keep her compliant. The pendant, the one Alexander had given her, had been taken from her almost immediately. It was only later, during a rare moment of defiance, that she managed to retrieve it, hiding it away until she could wear it again. As Emily spoke, tears streamed down her face, but she didn't stop. She described the loneliness, the hunger, the constant fear. She talked about the other people who came and went from Langston's estate, some sympathetic, others indifferent. And she revealed the darkest truth of all. Langston wasn't acting alone. There were others involved, shadowy figures who benefited from his schemes, exploiting vulnerable individuals for profit. When she finished, the room fell silent. Alexander felt a surge of anger and guilt, anger at those who had hurt his daughter and guilt for not being able to protect her. But most of all, he felt immense pride. Emily had survived unimaginable horrors, yet she had emerged with her spirit intact. Her courage inspired him to take action. The next morning, Alexander called an emergency meeting with his legal team and private investigators. Together, they reviewed everything they knew about Victor Langston's operation. The journal Alexander had found in the attic provided crucial leads, detailing transactions involving stolen goods and references to accomplices. With this information, they began piecing together a network of corruption that stretched far beyond Langston's estate. One name kept appearing in the records: Marcus Caldwell, a wealthy businessman known for his philanthropy and influence. On the surface, Caldwell seemed respectable, but beneath the polished exterior lay a web of deceit. Investigators discovered that he had funded several of Langston's acquisitions, profiting from the sale of stolen items. Worse still, evidence suggested Caldwell may have played a role in trafficking vulnerable individuals, including children. Armed with this knowledge, Alexander made a bold decision. He would expose Caldwell and bring him to justice, not just for Emily's sake, but for all the victims whose lives had been destroyed by his greed. It wouldn't be easy. Caldwell was powerful, with connections that reached into high places, but Alexander was determined. If anyone could take down a man like Caldwell, it was him. He partnered with law enforcement agencies, sharing the evidence. His team had gathered. Detectives launched an investigation, raiding properties linked to Caldwell and interviewing former employees of Langston's estate. Slowly, the pieces of the puzzle came together, revealing a chilling pattern of exploitation and abuse. Meanwhile, Alexander worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the issue. Through Emily's light, the foundation he had established, he organized press conferences and campaigns to highlight the dangers faced by runaway youths and missing children. Emily joined him at some of these events, bravely sharing her story, to shed light on the realities of human trafficking and exploitation. At first, speaking publicly terrified her. Standing in front of cameras and crowds brought back memories she preferred to forget. But each time she stepped onto the stage, she reminded herself why she was doing it, to ensure no one else suffered as she had. Her courage resonated with audiences worldwide, inspiring donations, volunteer efforts, and policy changes aimed at protecting vulnerable populations. As the investigation into Caldwell intensified, so did the backlash. Threats poured in, warning Alexander to drop the case or face consequences. Anonymous calls, menacing emails, and even vandalism targeted his businesses and home. But Alexander refused to back down. He hired security teams to protect himself and Emily, ensuring their safety while pursuing justice. One night, as father and daughter sat together discussing the latest developments, Emily turned to him with a determined look. "Dad, I want to testify," she said firmly. "If this goes to trial, I want to tell my story in court. I want everyone to know what happened." Alexander hesitated, torn between pride and concern. Testifying would put Emily directly in the spotlight, reopening old wounds and exposing her to scrutiny. But he also knew how important it was for her to reclaim her voice. After a long pause, he nodded. "All right," he said. "But we'll prepare together. You won't face this alone." With the help of lawyers and counselors, Emily began preparing her testimony. They practiced questions, rehearsed responses, and discussed strategies for staying calm under pressure. It was grueling work, but Emily approached it with unwavering resolve. Each session brought her closer to closure, helping her process the trauma in a constructive way. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as spectators packed the benches, eager to witness the downfall of Marcus Caldwell. Reporters lined the walls, cameras flashing as Emily and Alexander entered, flanked by security guards. Emily clutched her father's arm tightly, her knuckles white with tension. But when she took the stand, her voice rang clear and steady. She recounted her experiences without hesitation, describing how Langston and Caldwell had exploited her and countless others. Her words painted a vivid picture of suffering and survival, leaving many in the audience visibly moved. Even the judge, typically stoic, wiped away a tear as she concluded her testimony. Caldwell's defense team tried to discredit her, questioning her credibility and suggesting she was seeking revenge. But Emily remained composed, answering their challenges with poise and clarity. By the end of the trial, it was clear her testimony had struck a chord. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before delivering a guilty verdict. When the verdict was announced, Emily let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged her father tightly. "We did it," she whispered. "It's over." For Alexander, seeing justice served was bittersweet. While Caldwell's conviction marked a significant victory, it couldn't erase the pain Emily had endured. Still, it was a step toward healing, a chance to close one chapter and begin another. In the weeks that followed, Emily continued working with Emily's Light, channeling her experiences into advocacy. She traveled across the country, speaking at schools, shelters, and community centers, urging young people to seek help rather than run away. Her message was simple, yet powerful. You are stronger than you think, and you are never truly alone. Through her efforts, Emily transformed her tragedy into triumph, becoming a beacon of hope for others in similar situations. And though the road ahead remained uncertain, she faced it with courage, knowing she had her father by her side. As they stood together on the steps of the courthouse, watching reporters pack up their equipment, Alexander slipped an arm around his daughter's shoulders. "Proud of you doesn't even begin to cover it," he said, smiling. "You're amazing, Emily." She leaned into him, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. "Thanks, Dad," she replied, "for everything." And in that moment, surrounded by the promise of a brighter future, they knew they had finally begun to heal, not just as individuals, but as a family reunited against all odds. The victory in court was a turning point for Emily and Alexander Hartwell, but it didn't mark the end of their journey. While Marcus Caldwell's conviction brought some measure of justice, the scars left by his crimes, and those of Victor Langston, ran deep. For Emily, testifying in court had been both cathartic and exhausting. She had faced her demons head-on, sharing her story with the world, but the emotional toll lingered long after the trial ended. In the days following the verdict, Emily struggled to adjust to life outside the courtroom spotlight. The media frenzy surrounding the case had died down, but its effects were still visible. Strangers approached her on the street, offering words of admiration or sympathy. Friends she hadn't seen since childhood reached out, eager to reconnect. Though well-intentioned, these interactions often left her feeling overwhelmed. She wasn't ready to embrace the attention. All she wanted was quiet time to heal. Alexander noticed her withdrawal and decided to take action. He rented a small cabin by a lake 2 hours outside the city, hoping a change of scenery might help Emily recharge. "Just you and me," he told her one evening over dinner. "No reporters, no cameras, no distractions, just peace." At first, Emily hesitated. Leaving the safety of their penthouse felt daunting, especially after everything she'd endured. But something about the idea appealed to her, a chance to escape the noise and chaos of the city, even if only for a little while. Reluctantly, she agreed. The drive to the cabin was peaceful, the hum of the car engine blending with the soft melodies playing on the radio. Emily stared out the window, watching as skyscrapers gave way to rolling hills and dense forests. It was strange how different the world looked beyond the confines of Manhattan. Here, nature ruled supreme, untouched by human greed or corruption. When they arrived at the cabin, Emily stepped out of the car and took a deep breath. The air smelled fresh, tinged with the scent of pine trees and wildflowers. Birds chirped overhead, and the gentle lapping of water against the shore provided a soothing soundtrack. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. Inside, the cabin was cozy yet simple, a wooden structure with large windows that let in natural light. A stone fireplace dominated the living room, surrounded by plush chairs and a worn rug. Upstairs, 2 bedrooms offered stunning views of the lake below. It was the perfect place to disconnect from the world and reconnect with herself. Over the next few days, father and daughter settled into a rhythm. Mornings began with coffee on the porch, watching the sun rise over the water. Afternoons were spent exploring the surrounding woods, fishing off the dock, or reading quietly indoors. Evenings ended with hearty meals cooked together in the tiny kitchen, followed by board games or stargazing sessions on the grassy knoll behind the cabin. For Emily, these moments were precious. They reminded her of simpler times before her disappearance. Times when her biggest worry was acing a math test or finishing her latest art project. Being alone with her father allowed her to open up in ways she hadn't dared to before. She shared fragments of her past, recounting memories she had buried deep inside. Some stories made them laugh, others brought tears to their eyes. Through it all, Alexander listened patiently, never interrupting or judging. One evening, as they sat side by side roasting marshmallows over a crackling fire, Emily turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Dad," she said softly, "do you think I'll ever feel normal again?" Alexander paused, considering her question carefully. "Normal is different for everyone," he replied. "But I do think you'll find happiness again. You've already come so far, sweetheart. Don't rush yourself. Take it one day at a time." Emily nodded, staring into the flames. His words comforted her, though she knew healing wouldn't happen overnight. Still, being here, in this peaceful haven with her father, gave her hope. Hope that someday she might wake up without fear, without pain, without regret. Back in the city, Emily's light continued gaining momentum. With Caldwell's conviction making headlines, public interest in the foundation skyrocketed. Donations poured in, allowing them to expand their reach and resources. Volunteers joined forces, organizing workshops, fundraisers, and awareness campaigns aimed at preventing child exploitation and supporting survivors. Emily played an active role in the foundation's growth, using her voice to advocate for change. She collaborated with lawmakers to draft legislation protecting runaway youths and increasing penalties for traffickers. She also worked closely with therapists and social workers to develop programs tailored to survivors' needs. Her dedication earned her recognition not just locally, but nationally. Despite her growing responsibilities, Emily insisted on maintaining balance. She enrolled in online courses to finish high school, determined to earn her diploma despite the years she had lost. Studying was challenging, but it gave her a sense of purpose. Each completed assignment brought her closer to achieving independence, a goal she cherished deeply. Her relationship with her father strengthened during this period. Alexander supported her every step of the way, celebrating her successes and comforting her through setbacks. Together they navigated the complexities of rebuilding their lives, learning to trust and lean on each other once more. By winter, Emily returned to New York City full-time, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The holidays were approaching, filling the streets with twinkling lights and cheerful music. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of excitement. This Christmas would be different, not because of material gifts, but because she had something far more valuable: family. On Christmas Eve, Alexander surprised Emily with a special present wrapped in silver paper. Curious, she tore open the wrapping to reveal a leather-bound journal embossed with her initials. Inside, the pages were blank, waiting to be filled. "I thought you could use this to write your own story," Alexander explained. "Not the one people tell about you, but the one you want to live." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. "It's perfect." That night, as snowflakes drifted lazily outside their window, Emily sat at her desk and opened the journal. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure where to begin. Then slowly, she picked up a pen and started writing. Words flowed effortlessly onto the page, capturing dreams, fears, and aspirations she had kept hidden for too long. As she wrote, a sense of clarity washed over her. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but she had tools to navigate it: resilience, love, and unwavering determination. And most importantly, she had her father, a constant source of strength and support. The new year dawned bright and promising, bringing opportunities for growth and renewal. Emily threw herself into her studies, graduating high school with honors in the spring. Her graduation ceremony was a bittersweet occasion, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she caught sight of her father in the audience, clapping enthusiastically. His pride was evident, mirrored in the smiles of friends and supporters who had rallied around her. With her education underway, Emily set her sights on college. She applied to several schools, choosing a program focused on psychology and advocacy. Her dream was to become a counselor, helping others overcome trauma and find hope amidst despair. When acceptance letters arrived, she celebrated each one with quiet joy, knowing she was taking steps toward a brighter future. Meanwhile, Emily's Light continued thriving under her leadership. The foundation expanded its initiatives, partnering with organizations worldwide to combat child exploitation and trafficking. Emily traveled extensively, speaking at conferences and meeting survivors whose stories inspired her to keep fighting. Her work earned accolades, including awards for humanitarian efforts and community service. Yet, through it all, she remained humble, reminding herself why she started this journey in the first place. As summer approached, Emily found herself reflecting on how far she had come. From the dark days of captivity to standing tall as a beacon of hope, her transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The pendant she wore daily served as a reminder of her resilience, a symbol of survival forged in pain but shining with light. One evening, as she stood on the balcony of their penthouse overlooking the city skyline, Emily turned to her father with a grateful smile. "You know, Dad," she said, "I used to think my life was over, that I'd never escape the nightmare. But now I realize it's just beginning." Alexander wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "And I couldn't be prouder of the woman you're becoming," he replied. "You've faced unimaginable challenges, Emily, but you've risen above them. You're unstoppable." Together they gazed out at the glittering city below, bathed in the golden glow of sunset. In that moment, surrounded by beauty and possibility, they knew they had finally emerged from the shadows. Their bond, tested by tragedy and strengthened by love, was unbreakable. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, as a family reunited against all odds. Emily Hartwell's journey from survivor to advocate had transformed not only her own life but also the lives of countless others. As she entered her early 20s, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that inspired everyone around her. The girl who once cowered in fear now stood tall, her voice steady and unwavering as she addressed audiences across the globe. Yet, even as she continued breaking barriers and achieving milestones, Emily never forgot where she came from, or the man who had stood by her through it all. Alexander watched his daughter grow into a remarkable young woman, proud of everything she had accomplished. He often reflected on their shared struggles, the sleepless nights, the tearful conversations, the moments of doubt, and marveled at how far they had come. Together, they had turned pain into purpose, channeling their experiences into something meaningful. Through Emily's Light, they had built a legacy neither could have imagined during those dark days when Emily was missing. The summer after Emily graduated college, she received an invitation that took her breath away. A prestigious international organization dedicated to combating human trafficking wanted her to deliver the keynote speech at their annual summit in Geneva. It was an honor few activists achieved in their lifetimes, let alone someone so young. For Emily, it was validation, not just of her work, but of her resilience. Preparing for the event was both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. She spent weeks crafting her speech, pouring her heart into every word. She wanted to convey not only the horrors of exploitation, but also the hope and healing possible through unity and action. Her father helped her rehearse, offering feedback and encouragement. "You were born for this," he told her one evening. "This is your moment." When the day arrived, Emily walked onto the stage wearing a navy blue dress, her pendant gleaming against her chest like a badge of courage. Thousands of people filled the auditorium, their eyes fixed on her as she approached the podium. Cameras flashed, capturing the historic occasion. Taking a deep breath, Emily began to speak. "5 years ago," she started, her voice trembling slightly, "I sat in a courtroom reliving the darkest chapter of my life. I told the world about the abuse I endured, the fear that gripped me, and the isolation that nearly broke me. But today I stand before you not as a victim, but as a survivor, and more importantly, as a fighter." Her words resonated deeply, drawing applause and tears from the audience. She spoke candidly about her ordeal, describing the manipulation and control wielded by predators like Victor Langston and Marcus Caldwell. She recounted the pivotal role her father played in finding her and supporting her recovery. But most powerfully, she emphasized the importance of community. of coming together to protect the vulnerable and hold abusers accountable. When I think about my journey, Emily continued, I realize it wasn't just mine. It belonged to the officers who searched tirelessly, the therapists who guided me back to myself, and the strangers who sent messages of support. It belonged to the survivors who inspire me daily with their strength. And above all, it belonged to my father, whose love never wavered even when I doubted mine. By the time she finished, the entire room was on its feet, cheering wildly. Emily stepped back from the podium, overwhelmed by emotion. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, not as a symbol of tragedy, but as a beacon of hope. After the summit, Emily returned home to New York, invigorated by the experience. The speech had sparked global interest in Emily's Light, leading to partnerships with organizations in Europe, Asia, and Africa. Donations surged, enabling the foundation to launch new initiatives aimed at education, prevention, and rehabilitation. Emily threw herself into the work, traveling extensively to oversee projects and meet beneficiaries. One project close to her heart involved creating safe spaces for runaway youths, a network of shelters equipped with counseling services, job training programs, and educational resources. These facilities provided not just refuge but opportunities for growth and empowerment. Emily visited each location personally, listening to stories and offering guidance. Many of the residents reminded her of herself, young, scared, and searching for answers. Seeing them find stability and purpose gave her immense satisfaction. At the same time, Emily pursued her dream of becoming a counselor. After completing her master's degree in psychology, she joined a nonprofit clinic specializing in trauma therapy. Her clients ranged from children to adults, each carrying scars invisible to the naked eye. Emily connected with them on a profound level, using her own experiences to foster trust and understanding. Her colleagues admired her dedication, calling her a natural healer. Despite her busy schedule, Emily made time for personal growth. She rekindled old hobbies like painting and writing, filling sketchbooks with vibrant images and journals with reflective thoughts. She also explored new interests, taking up yoga and meditation to maintain balance. Slowly but surely, she learned to live in the present rather than dwell on the past. Her relationship with Alexander remained the cornerstone of her life. They celebrated milestones together, birthdays, anniversaries, and achievements big and small. On quieter evenings, they cooked meals side by side or binge-watched TV shows, laughing until their sides hurt. Their bond had weathered storms unimaginable to most, emerging stronger than ever. One autumn afternoon, as they strolled through Central Park, Alexander stopped suddenly and turned to face his daughter. "Emily," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I want you to know how much you mean to me. You've taught me what true strength looks like. I couldn't ask for a better partner in this fight, or a better daughter." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she hugged him tightly. "I wouldn't be here without you, Dad," she replied. "You saved me, not just physically, but emotionally. You gave me a second chance at life." As the years passed, Emily's influence expanded beyond borders. She became a household name synonymous with resilience and advocacy. Books were written about her story, documentaries aired on major networks, and awards lined the shelves of her office. Yet she remained grounded, always prioritizing the mission over fame. In 2028, Emily published her memoir, titled Through the Shadows. The book chronicled her abduction, captivity, and eventual triumph, weaving personal anecdotes with insights on trauma recovery and activism. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece, praising its raw honesty and uplifting message. Proceeds from sales went directly to Emily's Light, further fueling its impact. That same year, Emily married Liam Carter, a fellow activist she had met during a conference. Their wedding was intimate yet joyous, attended by family, friends, and colleagues who had supported them along the way. Alexander walked his daughter down the aisle, his eyes brimming with pride. As they danced together at the reception, Emily whispered, "Thank you for believing in me, Dad. Always." Looking back on her life, Emily realized she had transformed pain into power, What once seemed insurmountable had become the foundation for her greatest achievements. She had reclaimed her voice, rebuilt her life, and inspired others to do the same. And through it all, she had her father, a constant source of love and strength. Together, they proved that no matter how dark the night, dawn always breaks. Their story was one of survival, redemption, and unbreakable bonds, a testament to the enduring power of hope and love.